sitting here with Mr. Bob Coates. He is a Sedona, Arizona-based commercial and fine art photographer. And you got to check out his work to believe it. He's just, he's one of those people that it just makes you sick because he just knows how he just, get aim his camera.
That's one of the nicest things you could have said, Frederick, that I make you sick. Oh,
it makes me sick because I look at your work. I'm like, oh man, this guy's just so, you know your way around a camera 110%. You know your way around composition, landscape, fine art, all that stuff. And it seems so effortless, which is where the sickness comes from. Art just flows out of Bob Coates. So,
do you know what's funny? When you talk about that and you compare yourself to other people or what you're doing, the problem that we have with that as photographers and as people in general is we compare our everyday work to somebody else's fine art reel. If you think of it in movie terms, okay, here's the rough cut, and you're looking at the finished stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. That is so true.
Yes.
Yeah, because you compare the stuff that you do all the time to your very best foot forward, right? So
correct. So don't hold up that high, because I do the same thing with other photographers. I'm like, man, that guy really makes me crazy.
Yeah.
Because it looks like it's easy, but it's not. We all work really hard at our jobs.
I love it. Well, let's jump into it a little bit and get some history of Bob Coates and how you got into this stuff. Where did it all begin? You've been shooting for since you a lot of people say, yeah, I've been shooting since I was 5 years old. Are you one of those guys? Or you
No. I borrowed my older brother's 35 millimeter camera when I was 12 years old, and I cross-threaded the film and didn't pick up another camera really until I was about 28.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When I went on vacation I borrowed a friend's camera and went down to the Virgin Islands with my now wife, at that time my girlfriend. And I made some pictures while I was there. And I used to do art, but could never get what was in my head out onto the paper. So I kind of blew off art. I used to tear out, everybody go, oh, that's so beautiful. And I'd be like ripping it up going, no, it's not what I see.
Yeah. You're that artist.
Yes. Apparently.
Tortured artist ripping up perfectly good artworks.
Well, somebody thought it was, but I didn't.
Yeah. So what was it about that particular trip that made you say, oh, okay, I kind of want to do this?
Well, I made some images, and I had good composition because of my art, study and background. Mm-hmm. But I had a few lucky instances of light, where it would be like, oh man, that's a really cool photo. And my wife saw the composition and what was going on. And again, at the time she was my girlfriend, but she turned around, she said, I think you've got a talent for this. Would you mind if I bought you a camera and some lenses? Well, what was the answer?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
No, I don't think so. Give me something else. Yeah.
Yeah, no, she's been my greatest supporter since she recognized the talent that I've been able to nurture from the very beginning. I really didn't think I was, had that much going on, but I enjoyed playing with it, and I picked up the camera and put it down for about 13 years. I had a dark room, had some little one-man 8x10 shows at the local, gallery in Belhaven, North Carolina, did a little stringing for AP. Moved to the Virgin Islands on board a boat after leaving a radio career. And we were teaching windsurfing up in Tortola, living aboard a boat. And my wife said, you've got all this darkroom gear and all this camera stuff, and it's all just rusting in the corner. If you don't use it, I'm going to throw it away. And so, again, she's always been the one to kind of, push me to, get things going.
Yeah, I heard one thing in there. It was all interesting. You sound like the world's most interesting man.
I've been very, very, very fortunate. I am one of the luckiest men in the world. There's no doubt about that.
I love it. But one thing I heard in there was a former radio career, and I could have guessed it from hearing your voice. You have control over your voice. You're projecting. So how did what happened there?
It is the control. Yeah. It's not the voice that you have. It's what you do with it. It's learning to speak from the diaphragm, and it's the reason I got into radio was because I love to entertain people, but I didn't want them to be able to throw tomatoes, and so you had your own safe little box to work in.
Yeah.
And then the very first job I got when I came back to the States, moving, you move around in radio a lot, and the very first job that I had, the the second weekend I was there, they said, "Oh, by the way, Bob, you're doing the a live remote from the air show." I said, "What? There's going to be 5,000 people." I'm like, "No, I'm not." So that's when I started getting over being shy.
Oh, yeah. Really? So how did that go over? Was it
it went really well.
Cool.
Went really well. I've been very, very fortunate that whatever I go for, I've been able to make it fairly successful. The problem that I run into is at some point I get bored. Mm-hmm. And I never got bored with radio, but I got bored with having to move around the country to try and make more money.
Right.
And so we finally went, there's too much blue sky in radio, if you will.
I bet you. So I know you also did a stint as a restaurateur. You were in the restaurant business.
When we finished up in Tortola, we taught windsurfing for about 4 years with my wife running the shop. And then when we moved back to St. Thomas, I ran restaurants for about 3 years. I used to turn 4 years, maybe 5. I turned restaurants around. And in the past, before that, I had waited tables and tended bar and things like that. Yeah. But I would take restaurants that were doing 20 dinners a night and take them up to 120 dinners a night. And then once all the things were in place, again, it'd be like you're babysitting, and I would start to get bored and say, "Okay, let's train up somebody. I'm leaving."
Yeah. Nice. So I'm seeing a trend here of you get bored, but you haven't gotten bored with photography. Is that because it's a continually changing industry and the creative outlet?
It is exactly that. I think that photography is something that I will never be able to master. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just constantly changing. It's going forward. It's whenever I start to think that I'm getting good, I just have to, poke around and see people that really are.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's that next trend to try and go. And one of the nice things about photography is there's so many different ways to make money in this business. Mm-hmm. I did weddings, I still do some family portraits. I obviously do commercial photography, and fine art is my real love, because I'm starting to get some of those things that are in my head out onto paper. Yeah. So that's really kind of exciting. Yeah.
But what about let's talk a little bit about the fine art piece of it. So first, define fine art. What is fine art, and what does fine art mean compared to just regular art?
For everybody has their own thing. Okay, fine art is a way for me to distinguish the artwork that I want people to hang on the walls to decorate hotels and restaurants and fine homes. That's what I'm considering fine art. And I've been pushing my photography, and fine art photography comes in many different shapes and forms. It can be a super realistic thing, or in the case of what I'm doing now is using a lot of multiple textures, I'm using photography and Photoshop and multiple images to create images that look like paintings. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because you say fine art. Well, people who do paintings sometimes work really, really, really hard to make things look super realistic, just like a photograph. Mm-hmm. So go ahead and figure what's fine art. Is it the thing that looks like super realistic, or is it something that looks like a painting?
Yeah. So let's just dive into your process a little bit for creating these. If you're creating one of these images that sort of straddles the line between painting and photograph, take me through your process. You're in beautiful Sedona, Arizona. So there's vistas right outside your door. You could go photograph. So is it, I'm going to go take a picture of that rock formation. I'm going to make some art from it. When you make that decision, what happens? Do you schedule a time to go out there, and then you import the images? What's the flow?
It always starts with a good capture of a good image. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people say, we've all been through that thing where we took a really bad image and turned it to sepia tone, added some noise, and said, well, voila, art. Exactly. Just to cover your butt. I mean, that's always something. And I guess maybe that's where it started, because I did make a few mistakes along the way. Matter of fact, there was a thing that I've learned so much from the mistakes I made. I think I'm going to go out and make some more.
There you go. Maybe that's my look.
It will be my look eventually. Mess up the exposure, but we all learn by experimenting. When you play, when you get in there, and I spend a lot of time playing with my images. I will take whatever subject it may happen to be. I will take different layers, put them over, and run through some blend modes just for starters. And after a while, you start to understand how the different textures will work with how they kind of interplay. It's all mathematics, and luckily somebody else has done the math, so I can just push a button and see what the math looks like, if you want to think of it that way. Blend modes mean if this layer is on top of that layer, and this one is this much percent of gray and this much of a tone and this much thing, if it goes with the other one underneath, then it will do that. And after a while, you start to say, okay, well, if I take this little pile of leaves that I photographed at one time and stick it over top of there and put it into a soft light blend mode, it's going to react a certain way. And, ooh, I don't like all of it, so let's mask out some of it. Mm-hmm. So it's actually, you know, when people say, oh, well, you're just throwing some textures over top. No. The work that I'm doing, I think, and because I've been working on it for the last 4 years, I've been trying to build the style, as you will. I've been working really hard at adding a lot of depth and dimension. Mm-hmm. You can get a similar look just by taking one texture and throwing it on top of a picture and say, oh, okay, I just did what Bob did. Mm-hmm. But when you sit those photographs or those images together, you'll go, whoa, this one's got a lot going on. And the other one is, you know, it did help it. And maybe it was cool. So I'm seeing a lot of that where, you know, people think that they're getting close.
No, in your work, or, you know, when you put on your artist hat and you're out there and you're creating or you're capturing the raw materials, you're doing the compositing, blending, masking, all this stuff. Do you have a sort of a what's a good word for it? A theme in your head or a message that particular print is trying to convey to the viewer, or is it, you know, I'm just making something that looks awesome, it'll look great on the wall, or is there underlying messages in your work?
I wouldn't say that they're underlying messages. There may be, mm-hmm. You know, sometimes
subconscious.
Yeah, you know, you don't know for sure. Sometimes I sneak some things in, you know, I'll put in like some Japanese characters, but fade them in really soft, and it'll be the word of whatever it is. Yeah. And you may not even, you wouldn't even see it for 6 months until you're like, oh, there it is. Yeah. So one of the things that I try and do is what's important to me is that people enjoy the art and that they don't get tired of looking at it. So that it's almost alive. So I've been standing in front of a lot of paintings in museums, and will spend anywhere from, my wife hates going to museums with me because I'll spend anywhere from 5 minutes to, as at one time I spent 45 minutes in front of a Monet. Oh, and wow. Not all at once. I did a half hour and then I did another 15 minutes after lunch. Okay. I mean, I went back to it. That's how impressed I was by it. Cool. And what I've been doing is studying the painterly information of how they mix colors, how one color next to another color does something, how the different paint strokes work, how it resolves different if you're 3 or 4 inches away from it, if you're a foot away, if you're 5 feet away, if you're 10 feet away, if you're 15 feet away, if the light is brighter or softer or moves around. When you can look at an image and if you change the light on it and it looks totally different, that's what I'm trying to go for, so that as people live with the art on the wall, you know, it's something that they keep going past and they keep looking at it and going, it's not just something that's sitting there like a piece of furniture. It's something that's alive. It's something, that's my goal.
You keep getting something out of it over time rather than just, oh yeah, pretty picture, and then move on.
Exactly.
Yeah. On one of your pieces, I'm sure it varies, the effort and the time that you put into them, depending on what the work is. But generally speaking, on the post-production side of things, what are we looking at time-wise from your side? How long does it take to get one of these things created?
Anywhere from an hour to 10, sometimes 20. Oh, wow. It really depends. Okay. It depends on what my raw materials are to start with, where we're going with it. I can now take commissions. So if somebody says, Bob, I have this rusty nail, and I would like you to turn that rusty nail into a piece of art. And in that, I want it to come forward into the room. I want it to jump off the wall, and I want warm tones of golds and browns. And I want lots of texture. Okay, so that once I have talked to the customer enough to get some information from them about, well, what is your favorite color? What is your decor? What do you want it to be? Do you want it to be soft and gentle and just kind of whispering from the wall, or do you want it to shout? Yeah. So once you get that information, then that gives you going. And the weird part is this artwork is now working its way into my commercial work. So this whole technique thing, I work for a restaurant called Soundbites Grill here in Sedona, and they do live music, and they have what they call as the Wall of Fame. So I take live images while they're performing, and then I take them into the room, into the computer and go play, and I create a totally different look. It's getting hard because there's now over 50 pieces up on the wall, but each one is totally different. They have a different color, they have a different feel, they have a different texture. And my goal is to make sure that as we continue this process, that it continually changes, and I'm not making the people not look good, but I just want them not to look exactly the same as the picture next to them on the wall.
It's got to be a challenge over time, right? I mean, like you're saying, with that many, okay, the next one can't look like number one, right? You gotta, right. Which will keep you pushing forward as an artist, which keeps you from getting bored, right?
You exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The cool part about it is I'm learning each time I learn some new techniques. Like I found that if you cut somebody out to layer them to get a drop shadow behind them in the image, that adds a certain amount of depth.
Yeah.
And I was doing that for a little while, and then I went, oh, wait a minute. We don't have any backlights on the stage, so we have no rim lights, we have no separation light. So, once they're cut out, now I can take that drop shadow layer off and add an inner glow layer around the person, and then make that on its own layer, use a mask to make sure it only goes where you want it. And now I've got the separation light coming in, so I'm adding even more depth and dimension to their work. Sometimes I'll superimpose their images in the background. In the one I'm working on right now, I ended up taking a photograph of the whole band together, and then I've individually taken them from their playing performances and scooted them around in there and kind of made it all work.
That's cool. That's cool. Bob, you sound like you have a really deep understanding of Photoshop, and you're going into blend modes and compositing and layer styles and all this stuff beyond just the normal, quote unquote, normal photographer. So how did you learn this stuff? Is it self-taught? Is it did you go through any formal training? How did you get your skills?
Mostly self-taught. When I moved from the Virgin Islands here to Sedona, I knew that there was going to be some downtime, and I just said what I'm going to do while I'm building up my clientele is I'm going to learn Photoshop. Mm-hmm. So I just, dug in deep and used companies like Software Cinema, who produce, DVDs, the internet, a lot of books, a lot of magazines, a member of NAP. NAP is a great organization as far as, that's the best $100 you'll ever spend if you really want to learn Photoshop.
Absolutely. That's the National Association of Photoshop Professionals, right?
Correct. Yeah. And they have just some absolutely fabulous stuff for you. They have, deep tutorials, light tutorials, and sometimes you just go fishing, because the one thing that they don't have is a good system for finding exactly what you want. It's not keyworded well. You put in that you're looking to do X, and A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, Q, R, P2 will be there before you finally find the one or you have to change your total search terms and you go, well, why did it come up under that?
Yeah.
I want to talk to them about that.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's a great resource. And if you have a personal problem with something that you just can't figure out, and you called your friends, your buddies, everybody's like, well, I don't know, I have no idea. They have a help desk where you can send in a question, and within 24 hours, somebody will personally answer your question.
That's cool.
So anyway, Photoshop has just been a really powerful tool for me to be able to execute my vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is the necessary tool of our particular art medium, and I guess the better you are in it, the better your work can become. Because basically, I'm listening to you describe your artwork, and if you didn't have that command of Photoshop, it would limit your creativity, right? Because you would only have
Absolutely.
a small bucket of things that you could do. Now that you understand how that app works and the possibilities in it, it affects the way that you're thinking, especially even when you're capturing the images, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing is there is so much in there. The people at Adobe have no idea what that thing can do.
Yeah.
Think of it as we go along, because it's all mathematics. there's like 8 different departments or whatever, sets of engineers, and they're tasked with doing X. Yeah. And another one is tasked with make this happen if that happens, blah, blah, blah. Well, a photographer gets in there and grabs one and says, oh, look what I did. And I see what they did. And then I go, wow, if you did that, then if I took this and did that and added this technique and put this over here, all of a sudden, it's like the permutations of the mathematics are just so incredible that we still don't have any idea what we're capable of. I mean, look at some of the the compositing and the work that's popping in out there, and what people are able to do and create from scratch, let alone from photos.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, you look at the whole universe and it's basically just math out there, right? So everything is math and orbits and all this stuff, and you like translate it. You look at Photoshop, and you're right. There's probably stuff going on under the engine in Photoshop that folks generally have no idea what's going on in there. It's just all this crazy mathematical goodness that happens, and you put this in on this side, that comes out on that side, and then this subroutine takes it, does its magic to it, and then it goes down the chain.
I want to address one thought there. And I've had this happen on a regular basis. People say, well, that's not really photography anymore. Okay, I'm not worried about that. I'm creating art. My art is photographically based. All my stuff comes from different photographs. And the other thing was when people start out, especially, and I was one of these, I was very guilty of this, that putting a filter in front of a camera was cheating.
I remember that.
If you covered it with your lens, and what people don't understand is that the camera oftentimes cannot and does not see the way our eye sees. We have infinitesimal changes in our pupils that if I look down to this dark area in my studio, my pupil immediately opens up and I can see the detail there. And if I look up at the light that's shining down on me, my pupils close down immediately and I can still see the detail in the umbrella. Well, if you've only got no change in one hole, you either see that or you see that. Yeah. And if you can't, the camera can't see that. So the idea behind filters and behind multiple exposures, I do a lot of multiple exposures and bracketing when I'm shooting any kind of scene, outdoors or even indoors for my commercial work, and then blend them together so that the ultimate image is what the eye can see. Yeah. And maybe a little more, but the idea is that we're able to capture that dynamic range and make it visible to somebody on a single 2-dimensional sheet of paper. Yeah,
you're right. That's the part of the whole idea originally behind HDR, or high dynamic range photography, is to capture detail from the darkest shadows up to the highlights. Whereas, like you were just saying, your eye connected to your brain can very quickly make those changes in exposure and communicate them to your brain, so you just feel like you're looking at one seamless image when you look around from shadows to highlights. But cameras can't do that. So
they only have one hole.
They got one hole. They're doing it in software.
They can change the aperture just like your pupil, but it's only one at a time. Yeah. Now the cool part is a lot of the newer technology, and I'm seeing this very much in the Lumix cameras that I'm moving to the Micro Four Thirds away from the bigger cameras so that a camera is with me all the time. And one of the things that I noticed in the last iteration, the GX7 that I've been playing a lot with, is it has another full stop of dynamic range. And where I used to have problems when I was photographing with the GH2 doing my entertainment photography at the club, it didn't have quite the dynamic range. And I had to, for every single shot that I made, I had to do multiple exposures. So you think of, the guitar player moving. Okay, you got to catch him right on that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And especially with the new LED lighting that most clubs are using now, because it's so sharp, it doesn't have as much, It doesn't have as much color information in each light. So if they make a blue light, it's all blue.
Yeah, right.
It's not combinations that add up to blue, which has more depth and stuff. It's blue.
It's blue. Yeah.
So, and it's very bright. So the transition from highlight to shadow was really big. Well, with the GX7 now, I've been having a great time going, I can get away with a single capture. And so therefore I can go more of the expressions and more for that precise moment rather than the moment when I could capture all the information I needed to have.
That's really cool.
Sense?
That's a perfect segue because I wanted to talk about your gear choices. As I know from reading your bio on your website that you, like you just said, you transitioned from DSLRs into the smaller mirrorless micro four thirds cameras now with the Panasonic, and you're a Lumix luminary on the Panasonic team. So tell me about that transition. What was the impetus that pushed you over, aside from the dynamic range, but that pushed you over from the larger cameras over to these smaller, more nimble cameras?
Size and weight was number one. I've been doing a lot more traveling with my wife, and we were going overseas, and we've been doing travels, and she was always like, are you bringing that big old, 35-pound box of camera gear and playing with that? And she was like, I really don't like it when you have that. So I kept looking for a smaller vehicle to be able to capture some images that were usable. The problem was, I tried several different point and shoots, even spending up to $1,000 on one that had, all different sorts of settings, and I could control the camera. But as soon as I tried to push the files when I was working with them, they would just fall apart. As soon as I tried to make them bigger and do anything to them, they were art before you started, because they would just go, all the pixels would just
mosaic.
Built in. Yeah, they would just explode when you tried to do anything with them. And I was just about to give up, and the Micro Four Thirds came out. I got the GH2 from Lumix, Panasonic, and I took that with me to France. I had it on my and the other part was the weight of it. The bigger cameras, let's say a 7200 lens on a DSLR, you throw that on a scale, it's over 5 pounds.
Yeah.
Carry that with you all the time, you start, getting some chiropractic problems.
Mm-hmm.
The other cameras now are about under 2 pounds. Mm-hmm. So I've had them with me. I never leave them in the room anymore. My camera's with me almost constantly, and I was able to push those files even from the GH2. And again, the dynamic range and the quality has jumped immensely to the GH3 and then the GX7.
So with the GX7, this is I'm really interested in hearing this, because with the small mirrorless sensor, even with the all the math that Panasonic puts into processing and all that, as a fine art photographer, you still find that even coming off of that small 16 megapixel sensor, you're able to blow these images up to fine art wall size, or do you hit wall?
Absolutely. I can push them anywhere I want. I've been really, really, really pleased. That was the other thing. With the GH2, they hadn't come up with the better glass yet. They hadn't come up with the Pro Glass. They've only really just started to attack or make gear for professional photographers, or way advanced and amateur and professional photographers.
Sure.
And as soon as the Pro Glass started showing up, that's when I started using, and then I got the GH3. I started using the stuff for my pro work. I'm doing my real estate work with it now. I'm doing my portraits with it now. I'm probably doing 85% of my work with of my commercial work with the smaller format cameras now.
And which one of that percentage, is it mostly on the GH3 or in the GX7?
For the commercial, it's both. They both have slightly different features, and I use them both interchangeably.
Yeah.
But when I'm on the road, and the camera that's living like on my side, it just is with me all the time now, is the GX7. And it was weird because I didn't really think I was going to like it when I first got it.
Right.
And then, as being the luminary, I was given one before they came out, and they said, okay, you're going to take a 3-day trip, and your job is to go out and make nice pictures with this. I'm like, I don't know this camera. I'm not a tech guy. As much as I know about computers and Photoshop and stuff, I am not a tech person at all.
Right.
So we met in Chicago, and we all fanned out across the country and started making images. Within a day and a half of using this camera, I was like, oh my God, this is very, very cool.
You fell in love with it.
I did. And the really cool part is, other than just being smaller, the smaller profile, if you try and do street photography and people photographs, when I would pull up my 70-200 on the DSLR and go, hi, man, make your photograph. people would, no, don't
Exactly.
take my, you.
Exactly.
I pull up this. Now I think I've had one person say, no, I don't want you to take my photograph since I moved to the smaller one.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty cool tool.
The bigger cameras are definitely intimidating for people, and they mark you as a photographer. The smaller cameras are, you're just another person, tourist, whatever.
Well, that was cool too. When I was in some places where they actually asked photographers not to take photographs, I'm still taking photographs, and I said, well, is this okay? Oh yeah, you're okay. They were shooting with a big DSLR. I had my little Micro Four Thirds, and I was able to, fire away, and they didn't feel that it was a pro camera. I'm sure that'll change as they realize that we can make some nice images with them now.
I don't know. They tend to realize things relatively slowly. I mean, we just got the ability to use our phones on planes just recently. So
yes, but don't ever let them have them on in flight.
Oh yeah.
Most people don't know how to use their indoor voice, and there will be blood in the skies.
It's too late. That cat's out of the bag, my friend. Sorry.
No.
Yeah, you can. Oh, you can use data. You can't make phone calls.
Can't talk on the phone yet. Oh. It's up to the individual airlines, and I'm lobbying hard to make sure it never happens. Because even just waiting for takeoff, and then before they tell you to shut them down, I've had people, like get the whole first class compartment go to jump somebody because this lady's,
I know.
Indoor voices, boys and girls. If you have to use it, indoor voice.
I know. Thank you. Yeah, I had an experience with that on my last trip too. Actually, it was at the gate. Not to digress too much, but it was at the gate waiting, and there's this. What I can only imagine is some executive type dude suit, was on a conference call with his team. And the entire gate, of course, had to hear every word of him berating his team. And, I can only imagine that he knew that everyone was listening to him, but he won for about an hour.
No, there's just no awareness. Yeah. Anyway, we digress.
Digressing. So let's close this off. The last thing is output. So you said that your Lumix cameras, Micro Four Thirds, generate enough data for you to be able to blow them up to whatever size you need as a fine art photographer. What are you printing on? Are you doing metal prints? Are you doing acrylic prints? What's your medium of choice?
I do for certain images, metal just sings. Mm-hmm. And certain other images, you put it on metal and you go, "What was I thinking?" Yeah. So I mean, and it's the same with all the media. Different images deserve a different treatment. So I will
print. Which ones look better on metal? Is it landscapes?
No, it has to do with the tones that are in the image. If you have a lot of bright highlights and things, they just blow out to no detail. So you need images that are rich in color, that have a lot of texture in them, that seem to work really well.
Continuous tone.
Yeah. You don't want to have things that have a lot of highlights in open sky or white clouds. Yeah. I wouldn't be printing those too much unless you've really got the detail in there perfectly. Yeah. And they can sing, but again, you have to really prep specifically for each medium. Sure. I print a lot of canvas, and I've just been working off and on with some Hanamuli paper that is just really stunning. It just adds so much depth and dimension on its own, and then you can deckle the edges of the paper as a thing, and by deckle I mean tear the edges of the paper so you have the fine art presentation, and you mount that up off the background, and then it has a little drop shadow inside all by itself, and you can build some really nice looking stuff. That's
cool. Are you doing that yourself, like doing the deckling and all that, or do you have a lab that does that?
Some depends. Mm-hmm. I have deckled. I bought a deckling edger. Mm-hmm. There's a big plastic sheet that has a couple of different edges on it, and you put it on the edge, and you have to pull it just right though. And once you've pulled it, it's like, oh, I tore that wrong. Let's print that one over again.
Right. And okay, then as far as labs go, what's your lab of choice?
I do a lot of my printing in-house. ACI is a good one that helps me out. They do a really nice job. And then I have a local printer. I try and spend money in my neighborhood if I can. And we do have a good Giclée printer here in Sedona, Sedona Giclée.
Yeah.
And that's been working well because, I don't know if you follow, but if you spend money in your own neighborhood, it puts a lot more tax base back in your neighborhood because the people you spend it with spend it back with you or spend it in your neighborhood, and it kind of keeps the economy going in your thing. I try not, unless I have to have a certain type of thing, I try not to go to, the big boys if I can help it.
Yeah. So Bob, let's close this off. I know one other project that I wanted to touch on that you're working on is this thing you call the Successful Photographer at successful-photographer.com. What's that about?
Correct. That's my website for photographers. It's based on it's got a blog and a lot of information for helping photographers do different things. I tell stories about how my images are made, about marketing, about sales. That's one of the things that we tend to forget. I was very lucky that I was a very good marketer, having come out of radio and managing restaurants before I started my photography career, because I knew how to get my name out there. I was a much better marketer than I was a photographer when I started out. Had it been the other way around, I may not still be a photographer today.
Right.
And I think it's really important that photographers know business and learn business and getting their name out there. If you can be the most fabulous photographer in the world, if nobody knows about it, you're not selling anything.
Yeah. If a tree falls in the forest, right?
Huh?
If a tree falls in the forest, huh?
Huh?
I love it. You and me have the same sense of humor. I love it.
Actually, I was in a forest, and I was there, and the tree did make a noise. So I'm assuming that
So you're the one who heard it. Okay.
I heard that one anyway, and it was actually scary because it wasn't that far away. But we digress.
Yes.
Successful photographer.
Yes.
So I work with photographers. I'm writing a book right now on marketing for photographers. That's pretty easy, simple stuff to do. I'm a big fan of, let's not spend a bunch of money, but let's get your name out there. How can we do that? And there's a ton of ways to just be proactive and not, it's spending money in a big magazine ad. Maybe not such a good idea unless you have like a budget of Budweiser behind you, right. Because people can't get it. But there are ways to get your name in there on a regular basis, displays around town, carrying your business card and just sharing your love. On a regular basis. Wherever I go, that's one of the most important things I carry with me next to my wallet is my business cards.
Yeah.
And designing those properly, that kind of thing. So I also do a little bit of coaching for getting people either, up and running or to review what they've got going. I can also help with, the coaching as far as, making imaging better, where's your problems? You want to get into print competition, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I actually have pretty low rates. And I can work out a lot of different ways to make it work for everybody.
That's cool. Sounds like you got your hands full. You got a lot of stuff going on over there. They keep you busy and unbored.
Actually, what's really strange is I'm semi-retired now. So
you're probably busier than ever, right?
And that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
the working with Panasonic and being fortunate to be named one of the luminaries was really exciting. And that happened because I loved the GH2. I was just running around telling people, oh my God, this camera is so cool. And Skip Cohen from Skip Cohen University said, man, you should talk to Panasonic. I'm like, no, I don't. That's, no, you should talk to Panasonic. No. And finally he says, I'm calling Panasonic for you and I'm going to make you talk to somebody. So we sat down and I chatted with Tom. And he liked the work enough, and eventually we came to a thing. But it really started because of my excitement about being able to have a camera with me all the time that didn't break my back.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love that approach, or Panasonic's approach to tapping the people to be luminaries instead of going the direction of convincing photographers that are using other brands to come over and luring them with gear and stipends and all this. They go the opposite direction and say, let me look for people that already love this particular camera and work with them. So then they get people that are already passionate and they just put some horsepower behind them. So.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, I haven't had the opportunity to try a lot of different ones, but You know, when you've got something that works really well, I don't have to stretch too far out. Again, I'm not a big gear head. I'm not a tech head. Yeah. I just love making great images.
Love it. Well, Bob, let's wrap this up. Where can folks go to connect with you? What URLs and all that goodness?
Okay, successful-photographer.com is the main one for the photographer, you know, geared strictly to photographers. Then I have a commercial website, bcphotography.com. That's B like Bob, C like Coates, photography.com. And then I have one-bob.coates. Oh, I don't know what that one is. Hold on, let me get my card.
We'll flash it on the, you can send it to me. We'll put it on the screen.
It's at .artistwebsites.com. I'll get that to you.
Yeah, get that to me. We'll put it right below you as you're talking. So.
Okay. Cool. So does that mean I have to go like this to read it?
No. Actually, I'll put it up here. So.
Oh, okay, that's better.
Cool. Well, thank you for taking the time today. This is the day before Thanksgiving. I'm sure you're busy with all kinds of craziness. So thanks for taking the time out to do this interview. I appreciate it.
It was great. It was my pleasure, and enjoyed being here.
All right, virtually. Yeah.
Virtual. Well, here. I enjoy being here, and it's good talking to you too.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bob.
All right, Frederick.